All right, we're back. It is COMP305 in the fall 2016 semester at Centennial, and we are week 5, part 2 of our broadcast. We just finished off setting up our player object and a couple of platforms. Player right now falls pretty quick, doesn't move. We need to get movement going, and to do that, of course, we need a script. So I'm going to go to Scripts, right-click, Create, New C# script. And we're going to call this C# script Player Controller. Here we go, Player Controller. Double-click, which opens up our mono-develop, or you might use Visual Studio, or Visual Studio Code actually has a good port for a good support for Unity. Okay. So we want to be able to get input from the keyboard, and my thoughts are we should get input from the horizontal keys, so A and D to move left and right, and then maybe our arrow keys as well, right? So in order for me to do that, we need a couple of things to set up. And also in our start, I don't want to pollute my start method with a bunch of initialization stuff. I want to separate, create a new initialize method, which I don't have yet, which I'm going to call in my start method. So I'm going to do that down here. I'm going to say, here are our private methods. And in our private method, we're going to, so I'll say this method initializes variables and objects and called. And then down here, we're going to say private term void underscore initialize. And again, the underscore is there just to indicate that it's private. And then what this is going to do is do our initialization in here. We don't have anything to initialize yet, but we will. Let's set up some private variables. So these are private instance variables or fields. Inside them, we're going to put 2 of them for now. We need a private transform, which we're going to call transform, and also a private rigid body 2D type, which we're going to call rigid body. Notice I'm using rigid body 2D, not rigid body. Rigid body is for 3D objects, right? I'm just calling it rigid body lowercase for us, so we can just use one little word. All right, so we got a couple of private variables, and we want to initialize them. So instead of our initialize method, we're going to say this dot underscore transform is equal to get component transform. That's the transform component of our player character. Next, this dot underscore rigid body is the same. Get component rigid body 2D. Okay. So those 2 things, we have references to those 2 components. Okay. I want to be able to move, right? And we're going to get another private variable called, and it's going to be a type float, which we're going to call move, right? And that's going to be, we're going to store the value of our movement, our input, right? You could also call this movement input or whatever it's going to be, but really it's going to be used for us to get input from the keyboard just for our movement. Okay. We also require some ways of tapping in. We want to have some input from the user from a testing perspective. So we'll say public instance variables testing. And one of the public instance variables we're going to make is something called velocity, which is actually a float. We're going to set the velocity to something like 10. Now, we'll see how it is. There's 10. Again, F signifying it's a float. Okay. So the thing looks like this. So transform and a rigid body and a move. We're going to expose the velocity. We're going to call the initialize method from within the start method, and here's the initialize method down here. Nice and easy. Let us add the player controller script to our player. So I'm going to drag and drop the player controller script like this. And notice that we have initially the velocity is 10. Okay, it doesn't do anything yet. All it does, we just connected the player controller script. Let's continue. Okay, if I want to move, I need to get input. I need to get input from the access that I'm using. So again, inside my update, and this is nice. If we're going to just do regular stuff, update would be fine. But what kind of update do we need for physics? Fixed update. Fixed update. Once per frame, and I'll say in bracket physics, right? And fixed update is specifically, it's very accurate when it comes to every time. It kind of does it at specific intervals, as opposed to best effort with update. All right, so we're going to say something like this. We want to check if input is present for movement. That's the first thing we want to check. Is input present? If it's true, we're going to say, well, this dot underscore move, the capture where the input's coming from, is input dot get access, and of course we're going to use horizontal. Basically, it's going to get that horizontal access. Again, just to refresh what memory of what this means, is if I go back to Unity, and if I go to Edit, and if I go to Project Settings, Input, you can see that on the axis, horizontal axis means left and right arrow keys or A and D keys. Okay, that's what this is. Now you can change all these values if you like. Don't recommend it, but you could, right? Make your own access or inputs, if you will, right? So that's what we're doing. When I call horizontal input.getAccess horizontal, we're calling this. All right. Let's just go back. So that's the first thing. So this is going to store a value between -1 and 1, and all values in between, like 0.35896 or whatever that would be, right? For part, for a part push of the button. We don't want this. We want it so that it's sanitized a little bit. And the way to do that, of course, is to do this. We can say this: if this dot underscore move, if dot underscore move is greater than 0f, so greater than 0, which means it's to the right, then we can do something. Else if, right? Else if this dot underscore move is less than 0f, so it's a negative number, moving to the left, then do something else. And then else, if neither of those are options, something else, then we want to say that this dot underscore move must be equal to 0. We don't know what we're going to do in here yet. We're going to do some stuff, right? Hey, speaking of move, we didn't initialize it in here. It might be a good time to initialize our move to 0. So when we start off our code, we'll say our move will equal to 0f. Just so that way it starts off at 0. Okay, so if it's greater than 0, what do we want it to do? We want it to be 1. I want it to go either from 0 or 1. Or 0, -1. Because if I have to take all those values in between, that means I'm going to be depending on how long the player presses the button. I don't want that. So it's either on or off for terms of movement. Okay? So we're going to say something like this. We're going to say this that underscore move is equal to 1, right? And this dot underscore move is equal to -1. So -1 and 1 in this structure. Let's check this out and see if it works. I'm going to say debug.log. I'm going to check and see, and we'll say this dot underscore move, right? And that'll enable us to see if we've been successful in getting input for the player. Are you guys good? Again, I want to do this more importantly because of trying to check to see if I'm getting the right values. Check it out. So play, pair false. I press the button, I get a 1. Press the other button, I get a -1. D and A. D and A. Doesn't matter how often I push or how long I push. I just keep on applying the -1 or 1. That's important to do. So that works. So I got input from my player. Okay, now I don't need this anymore. I just want to test it to make sure. Every time we do something, we don't know if it's going to work. Better to test before you go and do it. All right, next. I'm going to do something different than last time. We can't translate the character, okay, as easily. If I go back to Unity, if I translate the character, I'm translating the transform. I'm translating its position, right? But this can be bad from a physics perspective, because if I translate his position into a wall, it's going to go through the wall. Doesn't matter whether there's a collider or not, right? So I don't want to do that. I want to add force. I want to push the player, right? And if I add force, that means I have to have the right amount of force. Too much force is going to be, it's almost like I'm going to knock him off the screen, right? Not enough force, he's not going to move at all, right? So that means I'm going to affect his rigid body. We're going to use something called rigid body add force. So we say here, rigid body 2D add force. And the API for this part it looks like this. So we have two. We can go with force or impulse. Those are the two options we have. But this is what it looks like. We're going to say, well, a rigid body, we got it. We did this already. And then we're going to click add force. And then we're going to multiply it by some kind of vector identity, right? So it's up or down or whatever. And then times the velocity, which in our case is thrust, right? Now remember, if you don't know about vectors, if you forgot, if I go vector 2, Unity, right, if I actually spell it properly, if you look at vector 2s, Unity has some static variables that are built in to Unity for vectors. So for example, down means the unit vector for on the y-axis at -1. So defaults, right? If I go up, that means 1 on the y-axis. 0 zeroes it out. 1, the word 1 adds 1 for both values, and so on. So there's some stuff you can do with vectors that are really neat, and they're already pre-built functions for you. Same thing with other variables, like I want to square the magnitude, I want to normalize the vector, right? Those kind of things. Sorry, I can check to see if it's normalized. So, and here I can normalize the vector down in this area here. I can kind of normalize, make everything a magnitude of 1. The other thing is that I can also do other things, like I can calculate the distance between 2 points, right, with my vector. We've done this before. And I can also choose move towards, which we might use with our enemy, right? I can move the vector, but actually translates the object, right, physically in space, and it moves towards a certain location, right? So I can keep doing that. I can move towards here, and if I get there, I can turn back and move the other way, right? The other thing that vectors have in abundance is vector operations, where you can add 2 vectors together. All these things are overloaded methods that have been, from an operator perspective, so you can do vector operations, like adding one point to another, if you really want to. But really, really versatile classes that Unity adds in there. And again, you always have to think about that the transform component itself is really a vector, right, that you can go up and so on. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to add force. So we're going to go into here, and we're going to say something like this. This dot underscore rigid body 2D dot add force, right? And we're going to, it takes a vector by default. So I'm going to say new vector 2 object, right? And what do I want to add in? This dot underscore move multiplied by my velocity, right? That's what I want to have in the x direction. And the y direction for now, we're going to leave it as 0. We're not going to affect the y at all. Vectors, you can also choose a mode. Force mode 2D. There's 2 different modes. You can choose force or impulse. Impulse will give it one good shot. and it'll be gone. If you want to make a bullet with in 2D, impulse is the way to use it, right? Because it'll shoot the bullet. Force is a little slower. It'll continuously add the force. So this is the one we want. Okay. So this, as soon as we move, this will move our player right in the direction we want. Okay. Right or left. And because whatever we put in here, if the move is positive, it's going to move it to the right. If the move is negative, it's going to move it to the left. Multiplied by the velocity. So we're going to sanitize the move, 1 or -1, and then we're going to go times the velocity to get where we want to go. Let's check and see how this works. Now remember, we're trialing and erroring the velocity. Is 10 velocity enough when I have a gravity scale of 3? To see this in effect, let's put this gravity scale back to 1 and run this thing to see what you're looking like. So here it is, and if I press the right button, I can see I move a little bit. Right? Here it is. Look, I can see I move back and forth. Whoa, whoa, right? If I change this gravity scale to 3, though, sure, he falls fast, right? But with this velocity of 10, he doesn't move anywhere because there's 30 meters per second acceleration due to gravity pushing him down onto the platform. I need more force to go this way. So it can't be 10. Let's change it to something like 30. Right? 30 might be too much, right? Woo! Right? So we can try other values here. Here's another thing we can try, right? So this is 1, so I've changed my velocity to 30. My gravity scale is 3. I could increase my linear drag to slow me down more, right? I could do that. For now, let's leave our linear drag at 0. The linear drag would increase the resistance as I move forward. That's what linear drag does. All right, so this is cool. I want to change my gravity scale. I'm going to leave my gravity scale at 1, but I want to change my velocity to the right value, which is probably around 20. And if I try this out, I fall, and if I move, you can see that I stop pretty much where I want to go, but I got a problem. My problem is that I can, as I fall, let me fall from a bigger height, like way up here, right? As I fall, I can move my directions. I can change directions as I fall. I don't want that to happen. Hey, we're having a really hard time finding my character. And one thing we need to do in order for us to be able to see my character all the time is have the camera follow him, right? This is okay. It's not difficult to do. But what we need to do to have the camera follow him is make a reference to the camera object, right? So I'm going to do that up here in my public instance variables for testing. I'm going to say something like this: public camera, which is we're going to call it camera. Okay, so we're going to get a reference to the camera object, and then what we're going to say is after it moved the character, right, the player, we want the camera to follow, and we're going to do something like this: this dot camera, right, dot transform dot position. So the position of the camera, right, is equal to a new vector3 object, because remember, it also has the camera set back quite a ways, about 10 meters back, to be able to see the game in a certain light. And we're going to say this dot underscore transform dot position dot x, and then this dot underscore transform dot position dot y, and then we're going to leave the other one at -10f, which is what it should be. That's the camera. So the camera is going to follow the player. Whenever the player moves, the camera is going to move where the player is. Exactly. We may have to modify this a little bit to soften it up a little bit, because the camera movement is too exact. It's going to be like really fast. We want to kind of make it so that it's a bit of a delay when the camera moves to make it look nicer. So again, all I'm doing here is taking the position of the camera through the transform component, because every game object has position, rotation, and scale. All game objects have those 3 things, right? I also have the position x and the position y that I'm taking from my current transform, which is my player's position. This is what player's positions are, right? And then this is the -10f in the Z direction, or because our camera is set back a little bit. It makes sense? Let's see how this works from a gameplay perspective. Camera? The camera just has a, we have to make a reference to the camera right here, right? So what we have to do here is, because our camera, our hero is here, notice that we get a reference to the camera opening up here, inside here. So we want to take the camera and drag and drop it onto the hero like this. Here's what we don't want to do. We don't want to parent the camera or the hero and make the camera a child. We don't want that. Why? Because if the hero does something weird, right, the camera will do something weird too. What happens if the hero gets reset? Camera's gonna have to reset. So, like I said, leave it to where it is. Make sure when the hero gets translated, the camera goes too. Okay, let's run this thing and see if it works. So we're here. Notice that the camera, it moves left and right now with the character. The camera kind of moves. This is good, nice and smooth, right? If my hero falls, my camera falls too, right? And you can see that if I was going to go to the main camera, right, you can see that it's falling, 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 falling over and over and over and over. Same thing with the hero. It's going to keep falling, falling, falling. Infinite. There we are. He's way up here, and when he falls, he looks like this. You know, right? And again, I can test it. If I move the hero, the camera now seems to move along with it. See? There's no delay. As I move my hero, my camera is instantaneously moved as well, right? So it's kind of tied together. I'm going to depart from what we did this morning a little bit. Thank you. And I'm going to add a little bit of lag with the camera early on. So, okay, well, I'm getting my transform position, but instead of it being, as an example, right away, I'm going to multiply this by 0.8 F. So it's 80%, it'll go, and every frame, it'll get closer and closer, times 0.8 F. You okay? It's not working at all? Okay, we'll fix it. I'll put up the code on GitHub in a second. All right, so I've added 0.8 F, and let me just put this on different lines here so you can see it. So it's a new vector 3 object, and I've got a couple of, I'll put this on the bottom line here. So this camera object is basically going to multiply by 0.8. Now this happens every frame. So every single frame, the camera gets closer and closer to the player until it's right on top of them. So 80% of what the player's X position is where the camera's going to be. So slightly off. Thank you. Let's try this out and see what happens. So play. And it's a little bit delayed. And the way to look at that is if I was to do it in the scene view, right? The scene view. So if I move it up, see that there should be a little bit of play now with the camera object. It's too fast for you to understand what it is, right? Because if I move, the camera kind of moves a little bit slower than the player, especially if the player is moving really, really fast. You can see that the camera will catch up, right? Slowly, 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 the camera will catch the player, and there is a bit of a delay when it comes to that, right? So again, boom, right? If you really want to see it dramatic, like I said, you can make it different numbers here, like, 0.2. Something that's really dramatic, like only 20% of the player, right? So I press play. You can see that the camera comes into play, but it's way, way, way delayed, right? So I move, and then the camera would move slightly with the player. It's going to catch up eventually. So again, if you see the difference here, so it moves, but as the player moves, the camera kind of moves along with him. And if I go really fast, the camera will try and follow the player as fast as he can, but can't go so fast, so it'll lag behind. That's a 0.2. We'll put this back to 0.8, so it's slightly delayed, but not too much. Okay, so camera's working, player's kind of moving right and left, right? Now we have to face the most difficult challenge when it comes to platformers, my friends. It is jumping. Jumping is always a pain in the ass, right? Because we have to contend with a couple things. One, our gravity scale is pushing us down. And we're going to increase the force of us pushing ourselves up away from the platform a lot of times. Are you okay? It's not working for you? It's spinning around? All right, how about this? How about we pause this, and then I'll put it up on GitHub so you can get the code, right? Because otherwise, so file, save, scene, file, save project. Sorry, I don't want to leave anyone behind. I'll quit, and then I'll go back in here, and we'll say something like git dot git commit -m, and we'll say added basic player movement. Okay. Git push origin master. Okay, we got issues still. A couple issues. One, my player has a problem. So my player's movement is an issue. Sure, it moves. My player does move, but I can change I can change his direction in midair, right? So when I run, here's my guy, right? And if I move and if I fall, I can still kind of change his direction. Shouldn't be able to do that, right? When he falls straight down. Okay, that's one. He needs to know that he's not on the platform anymore, right? So there's a couple things we can do, right? One of them is we can kind of declare that if he's grounded or not. Is he grounded, right? The other thing I would like to do is this. I think I'd like to be able to switch his position, his direction, like the way he's facing as a texture, the bitmap. I want to flip it so when he looks, he's going one way, he's looking the way he's moving. Because right now he's kind of walking backwards, which I don't want. All right, so how do we do this? Well, first of all, we want to kind of do a couple things. Which way is he facing? Let's do that one first, okay? And it'll be more dramatic. Once you see which way he's facing, you'll see that he can change his facing in midair, which we want to kind of take away, right? So in order for me to do that, I want to do a couple things. One, I want to declare a private variable, right, which we're going to call, it's going to be a Boolean, and we're going to call it is facing right. So is the character facing right at the beginning? And the answer is yes, he is. So in his initialization method, we're going to say something like that. We're going to say, after the move, this dot is facing right is equal to true, right? Because he's starting off at true. And what we want to do is, when I'm moving to the right, I want to flip the facing, right? If it was left, I want to say something like this dot flip. I want to flip the facing one way, or this dot flip if it's moving the other way. I don't have my flip method yet, but I will, right? So I need to kind of make that flip method down here. I'm going to say this method flips the character's bitmap across x-axis, right? So that's what this does. And we're going to call a private void, we're going to call it underscore flip. That's what this is going to do. It's going to flip him, or translate him, if you will, in a different way. How do we flip him? Well, we have access to his transform, right? So here's his transform. But to transform, right, isn't the only thing we have we can do. It's not just position we can change, right? We can also flip his local scale is what it's called. But we want to test for this. So we want to say something like this. Well, look, if this is underscore is facing right, if that's true, then what I want to do is I want this dot underscore transform dot local scale, right? So that's different than position. The scale, I'm just switching a scale, right, is a new vector2 object that's going to flip them across the x-axis. It's going to make it so that it's 1, 1. It's going to set his, when he's facing right, his scale is 1, 1. 1 across the x-axis and 1 across the y-axis. In fact, I'm making it normal. I'm normalizing. So he's looking to the right, which is what he's doing right now. However, else, if he's facing left, then I want his transform.local scale is equal to a new vector2 object that flips him the other way. So basically, when we flip across the x-axis, we literally take the bitmap and then reflect them on the other side. That's what we're really doing. So that's all this does. This flip method, we can call it over and over again. We check to see if he's facing right, and if he is, we flip him. If he's not right, we flip him the other way. Okay. So this is nice. I like this. I like the flip, right? We do this flip piece. And this should be underscore flip, not flip like this. Underscore flip, right? So we called it flip. This is the flip, this underscore flip. And now we're calling it from up here. This is nice, but we also, not only do we have to flip, but we also have to state if he's going right or left. So we have to say this underscore is facing right is equal to true. And on this one, before we flip to the other side, this dot underscore is facing right is equal to false. So we're toggling. Whenever time we move left or right, we change direction. Okay. What am I talking about anyway when I say facing? Facing is where the character looks to be facing, like where his eyes are pointing, right? Let's show you what I'm talking about here. So now if I run if I didn't make any mistakes, if I run this thing, if I go to the right, he's facing this way. But if I turn to the left, he's going to face the other way. And now he can move, he can change direction, so he can look like he's moving right or left, right? That's what I'm doing here. So he can move right or left. This is important because watch, if I drop, I can still move right or left, right? Let me show you that again. If I drop, right, I can still move right or left, which I shouldn't be able to move at all. I should not be able to change my direction when I'm in flight. Okay, now's the time that we need to make the character jump. But first, we need some requirements. One is we need to know the only time that the player is going to be able to jump is if he's grounded. I mean, he's physically sitting on the platform, right? If he's not sitting on the platform, he's not grounded, therefore he can't jump, right? Now, you might have, for your mechanic in your game, slightly different things than that. For example, you may allow wall jumping, right? I'm not going to allow it as much as possible. And you may also allow things like double jumping. So he jumps up and he's in the air, he double jump again, right? That's up to you if you want to do it that way. I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to allow any kind of control. When he's in the air, he's in the air. He can't turn direction. He can't jump, nothing, right? So I'm going to make it so that when the only way that's going to happen is if he's off the platform. Now, there's a couple ways to do this. I could use a collider. So I can check to see when my player, here's my player object. I could check to see when my player object is physically connected with the platform. So here he is, right? When he's physically on the platform itself, that means he's colliding. He is grounded. And when he is, I can jump him up, and then he'll just fall down again, and jump up, and he'll fall down again. That's what he can do. So one is using the collider method, right? The other one is using line casting, where we actually draw a line between the character and the platform, and if the line touches the platform, we know he is on the ground, right? And the line's going to have to just extend past his feet, right? So it's another way of doing it. It's almost like ray casting. Think about us casting a fishing line, right? And it's going to come from the middle of the character to the ground, right? That's one way you can do it. There's advantages and disadvantages of both. Here, right, if I line cast down, that means I can't side jump. I can't go to the side of the platform like this, right? So here's my character. I can't go to the side and hover over here and then jump up. I can't do that, right? The other thing is, if I do line casting, if he goes to here, right now, by the way, he won't stop here. He'll come into the platform like this right now, right? Because my collider's here, not up in his head. He'll actually come up this high if I come to the platform. We have to fix that next week. But he comes up, and then he'll hit the platform, and he'll stick because he's grounded, right? That's grounded, right? Because he's touching the platform. So that's a problem. We don't want that to happen. For now, we're going to use simple colliders to do this. Okay. So again, if I play the character, he falls, boom, he's in. And now I can move left to right, and I can change my facing, depending on where I'm moving. Even if I'm running, you can see that if I change direction in the middle, he'll sometimes, with enough force, he'll kind of skid backwards, which is kind of cool. Okay. So how do I check for this? Well, in our code, we need a way of checking to see if the player is grounded. So private Boolean, right? And we'll say is grounded, right? It's done many ways up online too. You can see different ways. This is just one way. So what I want to do is I want to, in my initialize method, I want to state that underscore, is grounded is equal to false, because he's falling right now. In the beginning, he falls, so he's not grounded. Okay. Down here, I want two on collision methods, right? And here they are. I want to say something like this: private void on collision stay. There's a difference between on collision stay and on collision enter. The on collision enter just happens once, and then on collision stay checks to see if you're still colliding after a few seconds, right? So on collision stay 2D, we're going to say collision 2D, other is the other collider, right? That's what it is, whatever you're colliding with. If the other object, other.gameObject.compare tag is a platform, which we already made, then guess what? This dot underscore is grounded is equal to true. Right? Otherwise, if on collision exit 2D, then whenever he's exiting and he's leaving a collider, he's not grounded. Whenever he leaves a collider, it means he's not touching something else, right? Anything else, then this dot underscore is grounded is equal to false. Using two colliders, two collider detection, two event handlers, right? One to see if he's still colliding, and the other one to see if he's not colliding with anything. If he's not colliding with anything, he's in free fall, or he's jumping, one of the two, right? Now, there's disadvantages to this system, right? And we'll talk about them. Let's check to see if this is true. So we can check every frame to see if he's colliding, right? And he's grounded, and we can do that up here. So we can say under the fixed update, we can do something like this. We can say, hey, debug.log, show us what this dot underscore is grounded, what that is. Is it true or is it false? So if we check it out, right, we can see the following. We can say, well, it's true, he's grounded, right? But if I fall, it should say false. What happened? How come it's not showing us false? Because I made a mistake somewhere. So this that is grounded, if on collision enter exit, if on collision exit 2D, right, other, right, then this dot underscore is grounded is equal to false. This is important, right? Otherwise, this one, if my game object, I'm comparing my game object with my platform, if this is true, then I change this that is grounded to true. Okay, those are the two conditions. Do I change it anywhere else? Here's false, initialize. And here I'm just showing it what it is. So how come that didn't work? Changed it, but on collision enter, huh? Well, is it? What do I care about? It's anything. Anytime I don't have any collisions, it's false. This that is grounded is false if I'm leaving something. I'm leaving something, right? Because if I go here, and it's true, but if I leave something, it's false, right? The other thing to try and do is, and it worked in the morning, but the other thing to try and do is change from on-collision stay 2D to on-collision enter, same thing, but this one does a little bit different work. On-collision enter 2D basically says, hey, if I collide with something that's called a platform, change me to true. Otherwise, change me to false. Let's try this again. So run. It's false, now it's true, and now it's true. So my collision somehow, my exit didn't work again. Did you notice that? Worked this morning. But that's the challenge with colliders. Colliders, you know, you may not get what you want. Let's save everything to make sure we've got everything saved. Sometimes we haven't saved everything, and then it won't work properly. Why is that? Why isn't this working? On collision exit 2D, right? Oh, I didn't spell it right. No. Stay. Just back to stay. That's what I want. Okay, so run, and then when I leave, false. Let's try this again. So run, and when I leave, I'm grounded, but now I'm not. Right? This is how it should work. And if you want to check this out by the scene, right? Take a look at this. False. True. False. True. False. True. Right? So now we know that this works. How about here? True. That's pretty good, right? How about here? False, which is good. That's pretty good. I mean, like it gives you some basics on how to make this thing work, right? So now that we have that functional, we can know when we're off the platform. Now we can perform our jump. When we're grounded, we can jump, but we can't jump if we're not grounded. Furthermore, we shouldn't be able to change our facing or add speed when we're not grounded. So we should put this inside the check to see if we're grounded. And also, we shouldn't even be able to do this if we're not grounded. But I do want them to follow the camera. The camera should always follow him, right? Let's try this out. So I'm going to say, what I'm saying is, inside my fixed update, I got to check to see if I'm grounded. I'm going to say something like, hey, if this dot underscore is grounded, then, right? Then you can do all this. You can check. You can move the character, right? So I'll take all this stuff and put it in here. Okay. Only if he's grounded, then can you check if the movement is present for if the input is present for movement. Otherwise, don't. When I run it now, it looks like this. So I'm grounded, but as I come off, I can't switch my facing at all. Right? Okay, so that's one part. Part two. I've got player movement, and I can check if I'm grounded, but I got to check if input is present, right, for jumping. Okay, I need some stuff to prepare for this, though. I've got my movement, which is move. I need some other variable to detect that I'm jumping, because I want to be able to do both, right? So inside my private, instead of move, I'll say float jump. I can move or jump now. I can hold that value, right? I also want to put in, instead of a velocity, I want to put a jump force, public float jump force. I want to set that to about 100F for now. Why 100F? And why way more than velocity? Because I'm being pressed down by gravity at 30 meters per second, and I'm not going anywhere. Even with 100F, it won't be enough. Maybe it's going to be something higher, a much higher value. We'll have to check that out. So that's number one. So my jump force is different. Next, okay, we've got checking for input from the horizontal axis. What about, how do I check for input for my spacebar? Same kind of idea, except my spacebar input returns if it's been pressed. So I'll say something like this: if input get key. There's two different scenarios. Get key, which returns true when the user holds down the key identified by whatever I'm looking at, or get key down, which returns true during the frame the user starts pressing down the key identified by the key code. Which one do I want? If I press the get key, it means that I want continuous presses. It's want to detect continuous presses. I don't want to detect continuous presses here. I only want to detect it once. So this is the one I want. Okay, next. Then I want to use keycode dot space. So I'm kind of listening for keycode dot space. If it's true, then I know that I'm jumping. And I want to do something like this, right? I want to apply my jump to this. That's what I want to do. Okay. So I want to say then that this underscore jump, right, is equal to 1. Okay. So if input.getKeyDown is this, right, jump is equal to 1, right? But guess what? If I'm in free fall and I'm not locked down, right? So if I'm not grounded, right, then I definitely want to set my jumping, right? I don't want to allow my jump force at all, right? That's what definitely I don't want to do. So this is okay. This is okay completely, right? But this should only happen one time. And I should be able to reset my jump force every time, right? So if I'm not jumping, if I fall off, and if my if this isn't true, right? If I'm not grounded, and I can do that here. I can say, well, if I'm not grounded, right, which I didn't do this morning, I forgot. I can do something like this. I can say, well, else. This if I'm not grounded, then this got underscore move, right, is equal to 0. And this dot underscore jump is equal to 0. This may cause a problem later on, but we'll see. But here, we remember in this rigid body add force. We want to add force now for the jumping, right? We've added it for the moving. We're going to do similar things for the jumping. First of all, let's go to the next line here. So we moved we're going to do our velocity. And now, instead of 0f, right, we're going to say this dot underscore jump times this dot jump force. So our jump force is going to be added into our jump, and we're still going to do force mode force. So we just get a continuous force being applied. That's only if my key down is space, and it's only going to happen for a second. Otherwise, if it's not this, and if I'm not grounded, I can't add any more energy to my jump. Otherwise, I would be able to. All right, let's see what happens if this fails or not. 1, can I jump? I can't, but it's minute, right? Can I move? That's still important. Yes, I can. How do I increase the jump? By increasing the jump force. Let's do something like 1,000. I was going to go 1,000. There we go. Let's see what happens now. If I put 1,000 and I go space, whoa, right? 1,000 might be too much. And what happened? Look, he went right through the collider. How come? How come I went right through the collider? Not only gravity was too strong, it was doing too fast. Yeah. You'll go right through. Yeah. So you got to really be careful when you fall, right? There's two ways to make colliders happen. One is through trigger colliders, right? And the other one is through other kinds of colliders. But when I add force up, it comes right back down, and I'm going to increase my speed for a long while, so it'll go right through my collider, right? So this is too much, obviously. 1,000 was too much. Let's go to 500. Maybe 500 is okay. So I kind of do this. I go, space, woohoo, right? Oh, hey, right? I can't switch position. I can do this. Well, I can die, right? But I can't. If you notice, if I go, whoop, too much force to move, and I can't double jump. I can't do like a double jump. It's impossible. 500 is too much. In this scenario, the way I did it in this second half, it's too much. Gravity scale is 3, mass is 1, but I can't move. I can't jump like that. Let's cut that right down again. So instead of being 500, we'll make it something less, like 250. Let's see how that goes. Again, we have to kind of adjust for our game. That's not enough. Okay, how about 350? Boom. That's pretty good. So, oh, oh, ooh, oh, oh, good. Here's the thing that we can figure out now. If we decide this is the right number, 350 and 20, right, as an example, I want you to notice a couple of things. One, that the platforms are positioned incorrectly. For our game, if we want our character to live, right, we need to make these platforms closer, right? And just a little bit higher, right? Same thing with this one. This is way too far out. If you want to make it easy, this is the pattern, right? If I put this over here, he's going to jump, slide, maybe fall off, right? Either I have to make a longer platform, and by the way, I only use one platform, like a grass platform that's a certain size. I could certainly make this longer, right, to check this out. But it's probably going to be something like this. If you want to really test this out, I want to add a couple more prefabs, right? So add another platform, which we'll put further down over here, right? And just to make it more apparent what I'm trying to do with you guys, right, I'll add in another prefab, right? So now we'll climb back up again. So we'll do one of these, right? And we'll see the problems that we have when we climb back up. We'll do another one. So we'll do one of those. There we go. Okay, and let's see what happens now. This is just standard stuff, right? So here, oh, okay, we're dropping, we're jumping, we're jumping, we're jumping, and woof, see that? Unless you time it properly, the jump can be catastrophic. More or less, we have our jumping functional now. Questions so far? So you got player movement and jumping, right? We're way farther ahead, of course, than the first class because we just always are. All right? Any issues that you could possibly see with the jump and with the platform? It's too much? That means if I take my guy and I really put him up high, right, like this, and he accelerates due to gravity, right? And let's watch this happen. Watch him. So I fall. Boom. It's because the amount of force that he's taking, he's accelerating to the point where he's going to go through the platform. If I reduce the mass, whoo, everything changes. Yeah, like let's say, for example, I reduce the mass to 0.5, right? Like you're thinking, though. Let's try this out. So now I'm not going to float. I'm still going to fall, but I'm still going to go through, right? It's not what you think, right? Here's the collision detection type. The collision detection type is discrete. That happens once in a while. Continuous happens all the time, but it's more computationally expensive. So if I put continuous on and press play, right? Then if I do it, I should be able to stop, no matter where I am. But it takes a lot more effort for me to do that. And as you can see, because it's continuous, my 350 jump force is huge, right? Because I'm continuously detecting whether I'm on or not, right? See how big I am? I'm like crazy, and this is what we didn't do in the morning session. But I can reduce this a lot. With continuous collision detection on my rigid body 2D, I can reduce this down quite a bit. Let's go back to 100. If I press play, all boom. And now you can see that that's a much better amount than I was before, right? Let's see if we can find the right ratio. So 150, let's try that now. Not quite, maybe 200. Yes, but not 500, right? And then, but he's much faster. See how he's like flowing. Here's the other thing, see his mass? 0.5, right? If I put this back to normal, make it 1, right? 1 mass and 200 jump force, right? And try it again with continuous detection, right? Now again, you can see that even with 200, I'm pretty darn good. I can jump off like both platforms, right? And I'm flying. Why? Because my mass is 0.5. Let's make my mass 1. Remember, mass, the more massive an object, the more linear drag it has when I'm dragging on a platform. Right now it says 0, but it's not true. I still have some linear drag, and gravity presses down on me, right? So let's try and check this out. All right, so boom, I go, and now I can't jump again. Look, because my mass, I need more force to jump. Let's increase the force to 300. Right. Still not enough. Let's make the force to 350. Better, right? Now we're back to where we were before, but a little smoother, right? But much more difficult to jump. But now I won't go through anymore. Look, I couldn't even complete a jump there because there was just not enough force. See, look, jump velocity of that. So definitely, this has to change to like 350 or 400. My recommendation. At 400, just because we're changing values like you suggested. So, okay, a little bit too close. Okay, so we have a problem. I want to make the game continue, and it's taking too long. I need a death plane, right? Someplace where the character dies, and then he respawns, right? So he respawns in a particular location. Right now, we're going to put the respawn reference on the player, but really, the respawn reference should be on the death plane. Okay. It's easier on the player because we'll change the player's position. If we did it on the death plane, we'd have to make a reference to the player. Each death plane would have a reference to the player, so he would know where the player is to respawn him, right? That's what would have to happen. Okay, so what do I mean by that? First of all, what is a death plane? Okay, so go back in here, and I'll get my character closer to the ground, and we'll focus in on him. There he is, this ugly guy, right? And there we go. So we want the death plane to hang out somewhere down here, okay? Below the original scope of the camera, right? So when the player falls off the platform and he hits the death plane, he respawns somewhere, right? So the one way to do it is to make the player object, he's the one that's going to collide with the death plane. The death plane doesn't have any kind of rigid body 2D, just a collider. In fact, the death plane should be empty. Let's show you what I'm talking about here. So put the character down here, and let's add a new empty object, right? And we're going to call this thing death plane. Death plane. Yay. The death plane should be centered at 0, 0. There it is. And now I'm going to put the death plane below. It's going to appear below the viewport. Okay. I want to add a component. We're going to add a physics 2D component called a box collider. Okay, but when we go into zoom on the death plane, right? Oops. If I zoom in on the death plane and to show you the box collider, right? The box collider is a shape like this because there is no shape. Death plane has nothing. It's just an empty game object. So I'm going to make it so that the box collider itself, which you can see now, right, can expand as much as you want. So example, if you hit this death plane anywhere here in this part of the death plane, right, then we're going to respawn up here. Yeah, edge collider will work. The problem with both edge collider and box collider is just easier to manipulate, right? The problem with this approach is if the player leaves this box right here, okay? So he's coming, he comes to here as an example, and then there's another death plane, because there's going to be more than one, right? He comes to here and he jumps off of here. He hasn't gone to these platforms yet, right? He jumps off of here, hits another death plane, and now he starts from here. He hasn't gone there yet. He hasn't even made it to that platform yet. So you got to really decide when you hit the death plane, this one as an example, where the spawn point is going to be. And I always recommend the thing before, just the death plane before, right? Now there's a problem here. If you extend this death plane too far, like out to here, right? That means that when the player lands, you can start at the beginning again, right? So always trying to put the next death plane on this part of the screen, right? And have them start right here. This is the next spawning point, right? There's many ways to do this, by the way. Some people put like boxes, like have another box like this. So if he hits this death plane this way somehow, he can't go into the other one, right?
I was going to say, what I would do in that case is I would put another just trigger just for
something. Yeah.
Just, that way you have to be on the platform at some point.
Somehow to make sure that you've made the checkpoint, and then the spawn point would change according to what the trigger, your checkpoint is, right? So when you hit the checkpoint, that's the new spawn point, as opposed to, wherever you hit the death plane. Okay, so how do we do that? So if you look at the death plane, and this is what it is right now, so far we have a couple problems. One, we have to tag this thing. So we have to create a new tag, because we want to be able to detect the collision properly. We're going to call this death plane. Okay? And we're going to hit the death plane and then pull down the new tag, death plane. Yay. Okay, now I want to detect the collision. So here's my hero. And in my scripts for my hero, it's my player script, not only do I want to detect collision with the other platform on collision stay, but I want to make the other collision that we normally use, private void on collision enter 2D, with the collision 2D object. I want to check, right? I want to check that if the other .gameObject.compare tag, right, is equal to death plane, I hit the death plane, right? Then I can make lovely noise, ah, whatever, some kind of blood-curdling yell if you want. You can also make it the yelling plane. There could be a death plane, the yelling plane, and the death plane. When he hits the yelling plane, he starts to yell. When he hits the death plane, he dies, right? So we could do that, and you can have some interesting effects. Like for example, maybe he doesn't die, or the player doesn't die, but if they kind of fall into the yelling plane, right? Or they hit a specific velocity, they go really, really far, really fast when they're falling, right? Then he can start to yell, ah! But if he hits the platform, he's okay, oh, right? But if he hits the death plane, he's like, oh, he's dead, right? So different kind of sounds. That's one thing. Now we're going to say something like this. Well, we're going to say that we don't have this yet, but we're going to basically move or the player's position, right, to the spawn point's position. So you want to do. When I collide, I want to move the player to the spawn point's position. Okay. We're doing this on the death plane, right? If I want to make it like this. But what I need is a couple things. One, I need something called a spawn point. Public, right? And we're going to call this a transform, which is, we're going to call this spawn point. And there it is. So we need this spawn point's position. So I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say this underscore transform dot position is equal to my spawn point position, right? So I'm going to say this dot spawn point dot position, whatever that position is. We don't know what it is yet. Okay? We don't have a spawn point even. Let's do this. So in order for me to make that happen, right, I've opened up a space for spawn point, but I don't even have a spawn point. Let's make one. So for now, I'm going to create a new empty object. We're going to call spawn point. we go. Spawn point. It's just an empty object. If I can spell properly, spawn point with the proper way of spelling, with a lowercase and see, at the end of the day, I degrade by the end of the day. Okay, good. Now, spawn point exists way down here. That's not where I want it. I want it to be where the player was, someplace up here. It's probably where the first spawn point is. This is where I want it to be, up here. Save. And if I was to focus in on there, right, just to show you where I'm talking about, it should be approximately the location of the player now, like where we originally had the player start, something like that, right? And then what I want to do is I want to say on the hero, I want to drag and drop the spawn point as a reference on the hero object. So I know where the hero is going to start. It's going to start at the spawn point, right? So again, going back to my code, if the hero hits the death plane, his position changes to the spawn point. I can also do other things. I can cause him to lose a life. I can cause him to lose health. I could cause him to gain time. I can cause him to do many things, right? But for now, he's just going to regenerate, respawn. Let's check this out and see how it works. So run. And I jump off into oblivion. And I jump into the spawn point. Poof, I'm back. And I fall into here. Poof, I'm back. And I didn't quite make my jump, right? Because I'm jumping. And I fall down and I'm back, right? And I fall down here and I'm back. And again. And maybe one more time. And maybe we should check to see how far you can go before, right? So we can try and avoid going through the spawn point. And you should check the spawn point over and over again. Another way to do that, if you don't want to do it like mechanically through the character, is do it with the inspector here. So in the scene, we can just push the character down and see what happens. Notice the camera will follow him, right? In a lazy kind of way, right? So if I go here, he's safe. Notice the camera though, staying back here, right? As I move the camera doesn't follow because the character has no, like the camera should be following. One of the things we have a problem with is the camera staying where it is. I wanted the camera to follow. Right now it's like 80% where the character movement is. Should keep on coming closer to the character movement over and over again. But it's staying back. It's staying back over here. And that really is not what I wanted. So we have to fix this, right? But the good thing is the idea that we want to move the camera, right? Here's my player. As I move my player, if I fall down, he's going to fall down. And now we're back to where we were before, right? You can see though that the camera will continuously lag behind or catch up depending on where the character is. This is important to understand how this works. So we know we messed up here, right? Okay. So camera, the death plane work nice, right? It's a good mechanic to have because when we talk about the death plane, it's just a way of respawning, right? Now, the spawn point, unfortunately, is right here. Now, you were saying, right, that maybe what we should do is, it shouldn't be a spawn point. The spawn point should change position, because all I'm changing is the position of the spawn point, right? When I get to the checkpoint. So checkpoint, when I hit the checkpoint, the spawn point changes position to where that checkpoint is. And it should be a trigger collider or something like that. So when the player goes through the checkpoint, right, we can actually make a sound like boom, checkpoint reached, you know, kind of thing. And then he'll respawn from that point every time now. So it doesn't matter how big the death plane is. Death plane can be like massive. It can be the whole length of the level, but it's only going to transport you back to the spawn point when you pass through a checkpoint. All right, so that kind of mechanic, which I like. I like that a lot, actually, which is kind of a little better than how I done it this morning. Okay, so that's one. How do I make this? How do I fix this camera problem? And why isn't it working? It's part of it's a logic thing, right? So we check, and then every time, every frame, I'm saying the camera transform position is equal to new vector 3, and then the position, the transform position of the player, right? Times 0.8f, 80% of the position of the player, right? That's all it's going to be. That's not what I meant. I meant that it's going to be the position of the player. It's going to approach the player it's going to move the camera should actually move towards the player, right? Every frame, right? Until it's on top of them. So slowly the camera will kind of follow. The camera follow is what should happen. In order for us to get this working, we need a separate script for the camera. The camera should follow the player in a lazy way. It won't match the player's position, but rather follow. So for now, let's just leave this out, and we'll fix the camera follow script another day to make it more intense, more interesting. But this is okay. We can at least follow the player exactly. Now, if I was to check this out and run it, and I run it in the scene mode, now the camera's going to be right on top of the player. So you see that the camera and my player isn't going to be lost. It's going to be right on top, no matter what I do, right? Okay. If you find that the depth plane is too high, and you want the player to fall a little bit more, that's not a problem to change, right? We can go to the depth plane. Here it is. You can see the depth plane now, right? It's like this. Or if the depth plane isn't long enough on this side, we can always change that too. What was that? He is, right? Well, I'll show you that in a second. I'll make it lower, so he's going to fall farther, right? And then we'll change this to make sure this part is expanded this way. And we'll make the depth plane really long, like really stretch it like miles long. So it's the entire length of the level. So let's say this is your level, and we're going to make this long. This depth plane is massive now. It's really long. All right, let's go back to the hero for a second and focus in on him. There's the hero. And let's see that if you're right or wrong. Okay, so here, bam. Okay, he's there. And if I go to the scene, remember the scene is here. So he's got to go below here for it to respawn. So if I go here, see? Say that again, watch. Yeah, right down here. And if you really want to see that, to prove it, it'll be temporary, but I'll make it all the way down here, right? So if I go back to the play, character, and if I move this way, I'm going to fall for much longer, right? It really depends on how you want your game mechanic to work. I'm happy with something like this, right? Here's a question too. Could you color? This is another thing. The depth plane is really hard to see, right? I don't know if you guys would agree, right? It is really hard to see. And the thing what we want to try and do is we want to be able to see the depth plane. In order for you to do that, see this little cube right here? I can add a gizmo, right? So I can color the depth plane with my cube, or one of these. For example, maybe make the depth plane red. And now you can see the depth plane, right? This is really key, right? Especially when the items are hard to see, that you want to track. Like, for example, the player. If the player is really small, or bullets, right? Like if I want to track the player, I can do the same thing. I can kind of go here and choose the green thing, and now you can see player in the scene. So here's my hero. So now when I press play, it doesn't show it here in gameplay, but in the scene, it shows the hero and it shows the depth plane, right? So if I click on the hero, you can see now that the hero will fall until he hits the depth plane. See? Okay, and then using gizmos like that is a very popular thing to do, right? Because we can actually see objects in the scene. Same thing with platforms and so on. Any other questions so far around the depth plane and the hero movement and everything else? And I wanted to present it to you this way because as we move forward, there's going to be more complexity we're going to add to the game, right? Like I know I've seen some of you add things like score and lives and all that stuff, and a whole menu. That's fine too, right? But the generic items for the hero to move and everything else are there. Okay, one thing I'd like to do, and the simple thing to do, is every time the hero jumps, and this is going beyond what we did this morning, is I want to make some simple sounds to give us some feedback, right? So first, we'll do a couple things. One, we'll save the scene, we'll save the project, and then we'll close Unity and put everything up on GitHub. So we'll say to, kind of go up here and we'll say clear, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added player jump mechanic, right? And we'll say git push origin master. So that'll be pushed up. Good. So we got that piece. Now let's relaunch Unity. again, we do this because I want to make you guys, kind of see how the natural progression is when we use GitHub. We can do many more commits than what we're doing. I'm doing kind of the bare minimum. Okay. Next, this guy, when he jumps, he's going to make the jump sound. How do I do that? Well, I have in my sprites, in my sounds, I have these items: jump, hurt, dead, and coin. If you want to hear what they sound like, you can hear it. Here's jump. Right? Okay, you can't hear it. I'll show it to you now. Right? Nice and easy. Here's what it sounds like when he gets hurt. Right? And here's what happens when he dies. Okay, and how about the coin? Right? So I've got all these little sounds we can make. We don't have a coin yet. We're gonna add it in. And we have an actual coin itself, like the actual coin sprite. But we can also make it, the coin sprite could be a 3D object if you really want to. That's okay. So I want to collect coins. That's one of my thing that I want to do in the game. But I want to add some sounds for jumping and so on. Okay, easy thing to do. In my hero object, I want to drag and drop the jump right into my hero object. That's the first thing I want to add in. I don't want to play on awake, this audio source. What I'd like to do is keep track of the audio sources. For now, I only have one, right? I could, like I did before, have a list of things. I'm going to put the audio source a little higher. I'm going to move it up. There it is. In my script, I want to make a reference to each of the audio sources, right? Let's do that. So let's go back to my scripts. And on the top in here, we'll make a reference. Excuse me again. To a public audio source. We did this last time, right? Which we're going to call jump, the jump sound, right? And we'll do it one at a time. So the jump sound is what we're going to play when the player jumps. Very easy to do. How? Well, now that we have a jump sound, we can pull the audio source right in there like this. There we go. So hero audio sound, and it's going to be jump. Okay. Save. Go back to the script. Now, down here, when we press the jump button, right? So when we actually do the jump thing happening, which is right here, when this jumping is going on, right? We put the clip in play right there. So we say something like this. We say this.jumpsound.play. There we go. Let's see what that sounds like or how it works when we jump. So every time I jump now, we should be able to hear a sound, right? Oh, I had a double jump there. And when I die, right, I want to make the death sound. But for the death sound to work, I want it to sound off on the death plane, right? Now, right now, my sound kind of sounds like that, I died and I'm responding, right? You can make whatever sound you want. I just chose a sound. Maybe you're going to make a more dramatic sound like, oh, like an actual death sound, right? I want it to play. I don't want to kill my character necessarily. I just want to respawn them, right? So how do I do that? Again, it'd be the death plane. So here's my death plane, and I want to play it when the hero hits the death plane, right? But do I attach it to my death plane or to the hero? And the easier one is the hero, actually, the death sound, right? So if I go to the hero, now I need to add an audio source manually this time. I can only drag and drop once, like I showed you last time. So we need to kind of go add component, right? And we want to search for audio source. Right, here's our audio source. And there's the audio source that we're adding in. It has no clip right now, but we're going to drag and drop the death sound. There's a death. And we're going to move this up a step. So we're going to say move up. There we go. There's jump, there's dead. And we need to make a reference inside the player script to the death sound. All right? And honestly, you know what we want to do? We also want to make a header that points to the sounds inside of our scripts, just like we did last time. So again, I go down here, and inside this area here, I'm going to have all of our sounds inside this little area. So we're going to kind of put in here something like header name is going to be called sound clips. Right, there's our header for that. And inside the sound clip, we'll have another audio source we're going to call, dead sound or death sound. We could also call it respawn sound or whatever you want to call it. Right? It's up to you. Okay, so here's our. You can see that it's kind of splinters off here, and we have. And by the way, we could probably put velocity and jump force as movement, right? If you want to split up our inspector a little bit, and I can drag and drop the dead sound. Again, it has to be from the player source. So the second one is the dead sound, right? So there it is. So if you notice, there's an audio source. Has to be kind of going there, right? So there's dead. All right, so how do we want to do this? When the player hits the, pretty simple, the death plane, which is here, play that death sound. So we'll say this dead sound, play. See if that happens now. So press play, and oh man, I forgot to turn it off. Hold on. He played on awake. Let's try that out. So I meant to do this, right? He resets. Oh no, he got hit, right? Oh, it'd be kind of annoying, right? There we go. Oh, too much. Get it? So very simple, but some good feedback for the player. Again, you may want to adjust your jumping force and so on. If you feel it's too much or too little, you need to make some adjustments. And those adjustments are made by your taste, right? There's no right or wrong level here. Depending on how far you want the player to jump and what you want him to do, and that or her, that's what you put in there. Okay, so we got jumping sounds and everything else. That's really cool. And we've got most of it. I want to be able to respawn though, and I'll do that piece now. I want to show the respawning piece we talked about. So how do we make a respawn point? So here's let's say we get to all this place, and we come to this point, and I want to move my spawn point. My spawn point is right over here. Hey, this is a great place to add in another tag. We'll make it yellow. Here's our spawn point. And right now my spawn point, right, and my character are right on top of each other. Right? So if I actually was to zoom in here, you can see that character and spawn point are together as one. By the way, if you ever want to move the spawn point somewhere else, like a little higher up, right, you can always move the spawn point higher up or wherever you want him. So he kind of drops into the scene again. And same thing with the hero. You probably want to move the hero up a little bit so that kind of matches up with what the spawn point does. There we go. So hero and spawn point stuff from the top of the screen, they fall, and then when they fall, they land on the platform, and that's going to happen every single time he dies. I need another collider, and it's going to be somewhere down here, and it's got to be a trigger, right? It's a different kind of collider that we need than a physical collider. When we do traps or anything like that, you don't need to do a physical collision. It's just a trigger collision, right? Okay, and it only has to be on one. So how do I do that? Again, I need to make an empty object, right? So here's an empty object, and we're going to call this empty object milestone 1, or you want to call it, you made it to the, to the checkpoint. So checkpoint 1, we'll call it. Checkpoint 1. Okay. Checkpoint 1, and we're going to put the checkpoint over here, right? So when the hero passes, let's say here, so she doesn't go right, it doesn't have to go right to the end, right, kind of thing. When the hero passes this checkpoint right here, and just before they get to the last platform, right, then the spawn point is going to move here to where the checkpoint is. All right. So how do I do that? So first of all, we need some kind of collider, right? So again, we're going to add in a component, and we're going to go to Physics 2D, except for it's not going to be, we can make a box slider, right? Here's a box slider, and we're going to draw it too. So when the player passes through there, it's going to happen. It's got to be something dramatic, right? So it's one of these. It's going to connect, make it thin, so he has to kind of go by this area, and it's probably going to be like, even if he goes through this thing somehow, high enough though, so that way if he jumps through or whatever, he'll go through this checkpoint, right? So it doesn't matter how he gets through, if he walks through or if he flies through, he gets through the checkpoint. And sometimes people put it right up to the top, so if he passes through this whole area, so like something like this, right? Because otherwise there might be other ways of getting to the checkpoint, all right? So, but instead of making it a real physics collider, we're going to make it a trigger. Okay. So he can pass through it. And when he passes through the trigger collider, right, when the box collider, it's going to move the checkpoint, but it needs a reference to the checkpoint, which means we need something called the checkpoint script, checkpoint controller, or something like that. Can't be on the player, because the player itself isn't going to collide with the, I mean, it could. You could say when the player collides with this checkpoint, I could tag it as a checkpoint. Then, you know, use the checkpoint's own memory of the spawn point and move it over, right? We could do that. We could do that. But the character, all he needs to know is where the checkpoint, the spawn point is. He doesn't care about where the checkpoints are at all. He can go 5 checkpoints and then the spawn point will move wherever the checkpoint is. So how do we do this? Again, many approaches, right? So I'm going to make a new C# script. I'm just going to call this. We can use the same checkpoint. We have to be careful because I want to reuse this script over and over again with every checkpoint that I make, right? Checkpoint. So checkpoint controller. So again, it needs a reference up here. So public instance variable. Testing. And for reference. We're going to say public, and again, we have to kind of know where the spawn point is, which is a transform. Spawn point. Okay. And we also need to know when the character collides with us, right? Only the character. So on trigger enter 2D, collider 2D, other, and it's got to be a void, right? When the other.gameObject.compare tag, we're doing the other way around now, is equal to player. When the player hits me, that's what we're basically saying, then as soon as this happens, that event is triggered, the spawn point is going to move, right, to my location, right? That's what's going to happen. So this dot spawn point dot position is going to be equal to this. We want to try and get a reference to its own position. The right thing to do, of course, is to create a private variable for this, so that we know private instance variable. And we're going to make it that same thing we did before. So private transform, right? So we're going to call underscore transform. And we don't have to do this, it's built in. We do that from just a notification. We don't have a lot of initialization, so maybe in here we'll do it for the first time, which is the transform, right, is equal to get component transform. We do it one time in the start. And then from here we can say this underscore transform dot position. That's all the checkpoint does. Checkpoint, all it does is anytime I don't know what the checkpoint is, I could have lots of checkpoints, and every checkpoint has the same script, right? As soon as the checkpoint is hit, each checkpoint has a different position, right? And I can add in checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3. In fact, what I could do is make each checkpoint a prefab. They're just invisible points that I can put this stuff in, right, if I really want to. So now that I've got this, I'm going to go back to Unity, right? And I want to connect my checkpoint script, right, my checkpoint controller script to my checkpoint. So all of these, which means I need a reference to the spawn point. There's only one, right? So this is the spawn point. Here's my spawn point. And what I want to do is rename this thing instead of checkpoint 1, we'll just call it checkpoint And this is really useful because once we have a checkpoint in there with a box collider 2D, which is a trigger, what we can do is we can drag and drop this into our prefabs. And this means I can have many points, many spawn points. Here's my checkpoint right now, but I can have another one. I can put it over here, and wherever I put it is where the new spawn point is going to be when the player reaches that point. Let's try it. All right, so let's see if I can make it there first of all. So, hello. Didn't make it. Back to where I was, right? Okay, I should have made it now, right? Back to where I was, right? So now I've made it to that checkpoint. Get it? I didn't make a connection to the death plane. The death plane doesn't know anything. It just resets to wherever the current spawn point is, right? And that's the key. So very kind of an interesting mechanic. And the good thing about this is that way it makes it more interesting. It makes it easier for the player to continue playing. Otherwise, if you have a 5-minute level, if I'm playing your 5-minute level and I have to respawn to the beginning of the game, it'll be really annoying. Yeah, it's your game. That's your game. Yeah. Makes sense. So very simple stuff. You can think of this stuff all day long, right? Let me prove this to you. So let's say, for example, just to show you how it can work, I have one spawn point. And by the way, checkpoint, I have nothing to show the checkpoint, right? Again, I recommend that we use some kind of icon to flip it. So here's my checkpoint, right? So you can see it inside the screen. It's just a gizmo. I used your idea, by the way. Thank you. Where I said, here's a checkpoint. Yeah.
You could also use a trigger to change like a flag spray. I was thinking about that earlier.
You could do all kinds of stuff,
yeah,
right?
I know, I'm just thinking out loud.
Well, I like your thinking. So here's my checkpoint, but I want to add some more, right? So let's add some more grass platforms, right? So let's add some more grass platforms in there, right? I added a couple more. So here's one of them, right? And let's say this one's down here, and there's another one over here. So we're going to make this guy go a little higher up, make these things really close. And how about, here's something that I want to try. Can I make the grass platform, right, angled, right? So can I add some kind of rotation? Now this is dangerous because you don't know what's going to do, right? So I want to rotate across the y-axis, or is it across the x-axis? Let's just put this to 0, sorry. Across the z-axis, I mean. No, I was right the first time. I keep on picking the wrong value. Rotation. Oh yeah, I don't think I allow rotation because these things are locked, right? These little grass platforms. Because of my collider, this box collider 2D. Have I done it right? Hold on a second. And I'm rotating the whole thing. Let's try it anyway. Yeah, that's what I want it to do. So one of those. Yeah, I'll be okay. And what you can do is you can make it so that one plane probably is best to see how this doesn't work. This is a different brick that you need for this, right? So you can probably use a different endpoint. Like I can probably search for some kind of like collider that goes like this. For now, let's just assume that it's like a ramp, right? Let's see what happens. So when I go to the ramp and it kind of goes up there, maybe we'll make another one that goes this way, right? So add another one in there. Oops. Here, I'll just copy this one. There. And I'll pull this in, pull this up. So they're right next to each other. Again, this doesn't make any sense, right? Maybe this one should come forward a little bit, but it doesn't matter. You can see that this is the kind of shape that I want. And you could use, there's different ways to do this. You can use different bricks, different end cap for this. There might be even already pre-built tiles that do this kind of thing that make it look nicer, right? But the idea here is the collider is important. Colliders go this way. All right, so we've got this piece, and let's just test it. So I go boom, boom. You won't hear the sounds anymore, but I can. Oh, okay, there. I'm going to fail a couple times because I really suck at my own game here. And that little piece right there, even though I've got my thing there. Now here's a little interesting thing. I can't see how I can't climb. This is a problem. Watch. I have to kind of build up some momentum for me to go up, because otherwise I can't make it, right? How come? I don't have a way of I don't have my climbing mechanism isn't right. It's almost like I have to build in another kind of physics up here than I would normally build in, right? So I can climb up the stairs or whatever. And there's many methods to do this. Again, you can change the physics material on this area here. You can also change the mechanics. So if he's on a tilted platform, then there's a different behavior than when I'm on a flat platform. Lots of different things that can affect this. But from here, I can at least jump, right, until I get to this point, and then I can go straight again, right? Okay, so when I come to here, I want this platform to extend, and when I come to the end, I want it to have another checkpoint. So let's try this out. So we'll do this one of this. So command, extend this, and we'll do it again. And again, we're using these little platforms, but it's totally not necessary to do this. And then here's the checkpoint. I want to grab another checkpoint and put it in here, right? There's my next checkpoint. And I want to focus in on there. So you can see the checkpoint has to kind of hit the ground a little bit, right? And it's only when I maybe come to this point that here's the second checkpoint. So first checkpoint, come over here, second checkpoint. So now when I die, I'm going to spawn here, not there. Let's see. Let's see if I can make it there again. No. Helps. That's a really difficult. I'm going to change that platform. So that's what I'm saying. And this when it comes to testing, you realize that there's some stuff that doesn't work properly. Like this should be just undo. This should be slightly different, just slightly more on this side, right? Because like I said, the separation makes this jump really hard, and it makes it so that I can die many more times, right? See, I jump right over there. Now, see, I made it. So I moved that plug. See, I'm gloating. Okay, don't try. Platformers. Now I'm stuck. Okay, I'll jump up there. Okay, and then I passed the second checkpoint. So if I die, oh, did I actually respawn? No, it didn't do it. No, it didn't do it. Well, back to the drawing board. Yeah, this is the first checkpoint, but when I hit the second checkpoint, no, it only triggers one time. So let's make sure that the checkpoint, it doesn't have a spawn point transform built in. That's why. I made it the transform, right, is here, but now I need to do one of these. And the problem is, see the spawn point? I can't connect to it with a prefab, right? Okay. So what do I mean to how do I fix that problem? That is a common problem with prefabs. All right, I need to find object with tag. That's what I need to do, right? And the object that I'm going to find is the transform, right? So I know that the spawn point doesn't have any kind of name to it, no tag. So I can make a name. Again, this is extra work, right? But hey, you guys asked me to do it. Let's do it. So I'm going to go to add tag. And we'll just call this another one. We'll make this call spawn point. Right? I know, it's crazy. And what we'll do is we'll tag this as a spawn point. Okay, now good. Yay. All right, so the spawn point, this one knows about it, this one, because I dragged and dropped this one on, right? But the next checkpoint that I put in, right, which was this one, right? Because I didn't drag and drop a spawn point in there, it didn't know, and it shouldn't have to know. It shouldn't. I shouldn't have to drag and drop this in there. It should assign itself as a checkpoint or a spawn point, right? So how do I do that? Back to the drawing board. It's like what I like to say, right? All right. So I want to get a reference to the spawn point, and I want to do something like get object with tag name. is the way I want to use it. If you guys don't know where that is, and if you want to remember this from the video that we're making, you can say get object with tag name, right? And that's Unity. So if you look at the scripting API for get object with tag, right, it looks like this, whatever the string tag is. And they'll give you some great examples of how to use this thing. And actually, there's the respawns. So public game object is what it's got to be, right? Respawn. Okay, now that's a different thing a different piece of code that I used before. So I'm using a respawn, and then all I want to do is I know that each game object has a transform. So then I can have to rejig my code to do this. I'm going to say, well, you know, I want to do kind of a reference, right, where I'm finding the object with tag respawn, and I'm assigning it to not objects, but object. This is find objects that are tagged the same way. Each object that are tagged respawns, right? So that's one way of doing it, right? Get object with tag name. Okay. Or find game objects with tag. That's what this one is, right? Find game objects with tag. The other one is find with tag. So I'll show you that one. So find with tag Unity. Those are different things. One is a game object. The other one is just find with tag. Find with tag is a little bit more generic, right? Again, I can say this game object is the game object with find with tag respawn, and I assign it to respawn, which is what I want. So one object. So find with tag. Okay. And it looks for in the hierarchy to find that. So in my checkpoint controller, right? Here's my spawn point, right? And I got my transform, but I also want to kind of get a sense of my spawn point and what that is. Spawn point position. I don't have a reference to that, but now we've made it a transform, and I don't want to make it a transform. We should make it a game object. So here's my spawn point. A little bit different code, but I got to do something like this. This spawn point is equal to I think it's game object find with tag. Then it's part of the static game object class, right? Find with tag and the name of the tag, which is spawn point. So I've got my connection, and now down here it's not spawn point dot position, it's spawn point dot transform dot position. That's it. So now that would realign my spawn point to the new place, and it should do it every single time. If I go back to Unity, I should be able to see that clear now. It's a game object. I don't have to even make it public anymore. And also the same thing with this one, type mismatch. I gotta get rid of that. Go. So I'm not pointing anything in there. Save, apply, none, and then press play. See if that works. All right, let's see if I don't die. Yes. Just a matter of sliding as opposed to jumping. Oh. Yeah. Just you have to kind of, this is a problem. I mean, again, it's a different thing that, that's it. Moving and right on now, right? Here's something, what if I go back? Will it respawn me at the other place, huh? Let's see if I can go back, first of all, right? I don't know if I can make it back here because, I just went through the spawn point. So now it should take me here. Now it works. What was that? Yeah, I guess so. You could disable them if you want. If you want to do it that way, or if you want to go back to where you were, or whatever. It's whatever you want, yeah. But if you wanted to go back, you could do it that way, right? So, makes sense? So that's kind of the way you would do it for these different checkpoints. It's, you know what, it's a great way, again, a great thing to do for the player, so that way they understand what's happening. You have the death plane that lasts throughout, and then you just respawn whenever you pass through a checkpoint. And that's it. Any questions around checkpoints, spawning, all that stuff. Now, this is a challenge, right? This plane here is a challenge, right? One more thing I want to talk about before I think we end for today. Well, maybe a little bit early today compared to other days, right? Just to give you guys a chance to finish off that your diagram for midnight, right? So you can have a little bit of a social life, right? Is if you think about what we did with the sprites, if I went into my tiles, here's my tiles, and in my blocks, here's my blocks. I have a number of tiles we could have used to do different things. In fact, if you look at some of these things, right, they have a bit of blackness around here, right, to build up objects, right? Here's one that kind of has a half object, but there isn't anything that I see in this set, as an example, that has a ramp. I don't see a ramp at all in this set whatsoever. They're all flat blocks or whatever. Same thing with some kind of we don't see anything else in terms of ladders or anything else that I've seen so far in this thing. I don't think there is, right? Which is a bit of a problem. Oh, there is. Look, there's a bit of a ramp. That might work, right? Okay. But I don't see any ladders at all. So that's a bit of a problem. Okay. So what if we were to do the same thing for the other set? Because we have a couple sets. Here's the second set. And notice that this one here is the sprite mode is also single. I want to go to multiple. And I want to click the apply button and go to sprite editor. And now you can see there's a different set of blocks here, right? I got some other stuff in here, and I can see that there's a vine that you can possibly climb up, right? So that's like kind of like a ladder, right? Different mechanics here, and some teeth, some kind of, I guess these would be like areas that you could get hurt, right? Some other vegetation that you could pass through or behind, which is kind of neat too, right? Again, you can lay out, with enough time, you can lay out your blocks the way you want. So again, it would be the same thing. If I was going to slice, I would probably choose grid by cell size, and chances are it's the same as the other one. So 32, because I see that the pattern here is pretty much the same. If you don't believe me, you can check it out. There it is. Now you can go apply, and you can have access to all those as well, right? Because those two sets kind of go together, right? Okay, one more. The big one. We didn't talk about this one at all because I didn't get to it in the other class. Again, I'm going to choose multiple. I'm going to go to apply. I'm going to click sprite editor. And now this one. This is a little different, right? These are 64 by 64 blocks, and they kind of work a little differently than the other ones, right? In fact, I want to use this block from this tile in my game, right? Because it's kind of neat. I can push the tile around. It's something I want to push around to add some complexity. Like it's a puzzle. I want to push the block around so that way I can jump on top of it so I can make it to the next level, right? Okay. So first of all, we'll slice. But now I notice that there is approximately 64 by 64 blocks with no frame. The other thing is that it looks like they're very even. There is still a bit of separation, which sucks. And there's a bit of white space, which is even worse, which is going to appear white on our background. Like it sucks the bag. It's really bad, right? There's not much you can do about that, though, to be honest with you, because this is the tile set. We'd have to go through and change the tile set, right? So let's slice. And I want to do it, instead of by grid size, I want to do it by cell count. So I want to say how many rows and how many columns. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows by 1, 2, 3 columns. So 3 columns and 5 rows and 0 offset to everything. And slice. Notice that that was pretty good, right? Now, you can still do adjustments. So an example would be, I want to try and reduce the problems that I would get for using this little block, because I get these little corners here that are white, right? I could click on the block itself and make it slightly smaller, like this. I know it's chintzy, but we want to solve problems here. And I'm doing whatever I have to do, right, to work with the tile set that I got. Make sense? Okay, so I'm a little smaller than the actual tile. So this is, and I want to rename this one. So instead of it saying free 2D game tiles, post pick, blah, 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 It's just going to be called, you know, crate. You can actually rename them right there, right? Then I'm going to click apply. Okay, so I got my crate, and that's the one I want to search for. So I'm going to close this up, right? Save the scene. I want to go into here. I see my crate. Oh, darn things here. And I'm going to bring my crate into, didn't quite work, into this thing here. So let's go into the first grass platform. There we go. And maybe what I want to put is a tile there that he's going to push off. Now, this is interesting. So here's my crate. It's massive, right? And I want to zoom in there. So let's get rid of this, and we'll hide this detail. Put it back into this format, right? This needs to be reduced. The other one, we have to increase the size, but we want to scale this down by about 0.5. Right? Seems to be about right. There we go. Now, in order for me to push this thing around, I need to give it a rigid body because it needs to be pushed, right? And it needs to tumble, right? It's not bad. There's some, I probably could have done the cuts a little nicer, but you can always go back and adjust that. I want to add in a couple things. One, a rigid body, 2D. Okay, here's my rigid body 2D. I'm leaving all the standard stuff here. Next, I want to add a collider. Without the collider, I can't do much. Here's my collider 2D, box collider 2D. Great. There's my crate. And now let's press play. Good. Now, what if I want to push this thing? Can it do it? The answer is yeah, but then I fall too. And the crate doesn't respawn. The crate's gone. In fact, if I look down to see where the crate is, it's right here. Right? What happened? What do I do with that thing? Do I kill it? Do I, what would you recommend? Right? The answer is you destroy the object. When it hits the death plane, it gets destroyed. So it destroys itself, right? Now there's two ways to do this. You can put a collider on the death plane, right? And some kind of script on the death plane. If you notice, we don't have that script. Right now we have two scripts, on the checkpoint and the player controller. We could include them on their own object, right? In fact, we can make this script called, die. The script is called die. And basically it'll be the kill script or whatever you want to call it, right? And the kill script we can attach to any object. So when it collides with any object that has a kill script on it, that collides with the death plane, right, as an example, would destroy itself. All right? I want to show you this because these are tricks that you can use to help you. Because otherwise you're going to have this situation, which is like this object hanging in space, right? We don't want that. So anything that falls in the death plane gets destroyed. And by the way, you can have more than one script attached to an object, right? All right, so let's create this script. Let's create C# script. And this is a script I'm going to be using over and over again. So I'm going to call this the kill script. Right? In the kill script, what you're going to say is this. If I connect with the death plane, if I collide with the death plane, right, because it has a rigid body 2D, and the death plane does too, right? Now it has to be in an object that has a rigid body 2D because it's got to fall, right? So it's got to have a rigid body 2D. And I want to make a collision. So I want to say, and I don't need any of this. I can actually get rid of this, right? So I can say something like this. On private void on collision enter 2D collision 2D with other. Very simple script you're going to put in place, right? And you're going to say something like if other compare game object compare tag is equal to death plane. Right? If that's what you're colliding with, then destroy yourself. Destroy this. Hey, I'm just telling you, this is the kill script, right? Destroy yourself. by the way, we use this for bullets. If, for example, if you fire a bullet and it goes beyond a certain point, I can use the destroy script, because the destroy script doesn't have one option. It has, you can destroy it after a certain time. Like, for example, I can say destroy this after a float of time, like an optional amount of time to delay before destroying the object. Like, example, you fire the bullet, and as soon as you fire the bullet, you hit the destroy script. But the destroy script's not going to run until if the bullet collides with something else, right? Or if it runs out of space. Like, you fire it for too long, it just goes away. If it's off screen, basically, right? So it keeps track. It can keep itself, clean. The other thing you could do is you could reset this object back to where it was, but that's really complex, right? And reset the game in that way. So I'm going to say this. I don't care about the time. The time can be right away, right? So as soon as this hits the death plane, see you later. And let's check this out. First of all, we have to take the kill script and attach it to the crate. So here's my crate, kill script. Right, so, all right, let's play. And I push the crate. And it died. Notice that the crate itself is no longer part of the hierarchy. Right, or here it is. Wait a minute. There's the hierarchy right there. What do you mean it's not part of the hierarchy, Tom? Where is this thing? How come I can't find it? Well, here's the crate. How come it didn't die? Kill crate, die, die, die. Like, it didn't die, right? Where's the script? Here's the kill script. What did it kill? The script, right? So this isn't what we want. This .game object is what we want to kill. The game object that comes with this script, right? And let's try this again. Again, that was weird. Push it. Okay, I died. Oh, and so did the crate, right? But now the crate's no longer there. Let's check to see where the crate is. No crate. Let's try that again. Okay. I can die too, right? Let's reset. You see the crate's no longer there. Now the good thing is this. Here's a problem. Can I jump off the crate at this point? Can I move on the crate? Oh. Why? I'm not grounded. I'm not grounded. I'm only grounded when there's a platform, right? Because that's what I've made. That's what I've made happen. And notice my head is inside the platform too, because that's the problem that I had last time, right? I made this platform, and I've only put one little collider on the bottom of my character, but not on the head. So therefore, I can't jump off the crate because I haven't said that I can, right? My crate, if I look at the crate itself, right? Here it is. My crate is untagged. What could I do to make it so that I can jump off the crate as a platform, right? Right now. That's what I made it. You could also tag it as jumpable. Make a layer that's jumpable, right? Or whatever. Let's try this out. So again, here's the crate. I will tag it as a platform. It'll fall. Different kind of platform. I push it, right? I jump onto it, and then I can move now, right? In fact, I can fall, right? I can move on the crate. Right? Okay, and I can also push it. Look, that was weird. Right? Lots of fun is what I'm saying. You can make it so you can create like your own little puzzles, right? Don't spend too much time, please. This is like crazy. Okay, now that we got the crate, as an example, we don't have any other kind of things. We only just have the kill script. I can put this as part of my prefab. So here's my prefab as an example, and I want to take the crate, put it in my prefabs folder. There it is. And now that I got one, we're making this really messy, but I can make more, right? What's the problem with what I'm doing? Like, I got a lot of these crates, and I'm kind of putting this out. This is what may happen to you, by the way. You make a large scene, you're going to have very busy hierarchy, right? Very busy hierarchy, because especially if you're doing it by hand, you're not using a game controller to instantiate or procedurally generate the scene. You're not doing that. You're just using a bunch of stuff here. So let's add a couple crates. There we go, a couple crates to the scene. Okay, let's see what happens now. This is all part of testing. So I can push both the crates, right? One and then the other one. And notice what happened. I was able to push, but when I turned around, it kind of jigged the crate like this. Look, why did that happen? Yep. Yeah. Remember I talked about we're missing something, right? We're missing. What we're missing is, first of all, let's check, see if all the crates went away. And you can see in the hierarchy, there's no crates. That's a good thing. So the prefab thing worked. You're right. I mean, when we flip the guy, it doesn't mean that we flip the collider. The other thing is that I have no collider for my head. There's no collider, right? So if I was to look at my hero character, and if I was going to look at the collider that I have a circle collider, right? Here's my circle collider right here. Okay, question. What happens if I add another collider, right? Another collider. Can I add more than one collider? And what is it going to do with all the other stuff that I do? Like, for example, if I'm grounded and all that kind of stuff. I only have one on collision enter 2D. That's all I have. One collider 2D. Could I use multiple colliders of the same type, a collision collider, like a physics collider, not a trigger. I can make as many of those as I want, right? But if I want to do what you guys said to do, which is make this guy's head square, like a block, right? I can do that. Let's add it in, and then we'll stop. I promise. We were supposed to end early. So much for social life. Let's add it in. So here's a new, just because you're asking. So physics 2, I'll make a box collider, right? And I got a box collider right here, which I want to modify. It's not going to be the whole character. Only going to make it his head, right? And I want to kind of make it so that it's like this, but we got to be careful because now he can spin out, right? So let's not make it like this, but let's make it so that it's kind of half of his face, right? And it's going to be so fast that chances are we can get away with it, right? Also, I know that the other collider's down here, so I probably want to extend this one to about here. Right, so this is kind of that top part of the collision. Okay, let's take a look and see what happens with that one. So if I go look at the rigid body, the circle collider here, it's kind of they're kind of intersecting. Let's see if that causes a problem for my character. Like, what happens to him? Does he break apart? And now what happens when I do this? It doesn't really do it. It does bump him, right? But it doesn't do it as dramatically as I did before because I have that head. You can go into, you kind of can push the thing, but it's not as bad. Now there's a problem. And the problem is when I come to this point and I jump, right? I'm okay, I can go right through. There's going to be a time when I'm going to have that happen now. Well, jump. Then if I ever get to the point where I'm dying, like I might get stuck. See? Okay. And I get double, see how that double jump happens? Because I've got two things happening. I've got double the colliders happening. I got one collider for my head that's colliding with the other platform, and I got the other, it doesn't know what to do, right? So I'm getting double the force happening to me because I'm colliding twice, right? And that's why, yeah, it's counting both those colliders. As soon as I collide with both those colliders, I intersect with both those colliders, I get double the jump force, right? Which is kind of something that I don't want. Like, unless I can do something like that and get out of it. I can do this, no problem, until I make it up. Ooh, I can jump up. And then if I run, and if I do something crazy, right, like this, it'll be bad, right? Because I can get stuck. All right, that's enough. I'm presenting these problems to you because they're going to come. They're going to happen. You're going to check some stuff out. You're going to, you're going to do this thing on your own. And you're like, Tom, I have a real problem with my character. He's getting stuck, and I don't know what to do. There's some fixes that we're going to go into next week. But remember that part of it is going to be when we add the animation piece, and when the character stretches, so now he's going to be like this, he's going to kind of be leaning forward. The whole shape of his body is going to change, but our collider will not. So let's leave it here for now. I think we did a lot, and we've presented new problems as well as solved some issues. When we come back next week, we'll get straight into animation, right? So we'll do the animation piece because we need that piece to work. Otherwise, not for your game. Like your game, pretty much, for what I just showed you right now, with some very simple things, you can build most of what you need. Ladders are a problem. That's gonna be. I have to be honest. Ramps and ladders right now, and any kind of joints or anything like that, like those kind of effects, are an issue, and we're going to talk about them. Okay, but for now, because ladders are an issue, because when you go on the ladder, how do you go up the ladder? And you have to use different keys for that. Like the only time you can press the up key is when you're on a ladder, right? Because that's the key that goes up and down, right? And the down key on your keyboard, or the up key, the W and the S keys, they're the only times you can go up and down. The rest is spacebar. And if you're on the ladder, you press spacebar, what happens? Do you go further up the ladder? Do you jump off the ladder? Right? There's so many possibilities, right? Or do you make each rung is another platform? Do you make him jump on the ladder? Do you make him stop on the ladder? So when he sticks to, it's a sticky jump, so he jumps on the ladder and sticks into it. Like once he sticks, you basically move him to the middle of the ladder, like so it's centered, right? There's all kinds of little tricks and things you can do, and there's some good solutions that we're going to talk about next week. All right, any questions before we depart for the day? I think we covered quite a bit. Guys, thank you so much, and remember that tonight, which is a progress report for assignment 2. And then your assignment 2 is still due a couple weeks out, but I'm going to talk about your assignment 2 again next week. So be prepared for me to sit down with you and see what you're doing. Okay, thanks.